Hello, everyone. I'm Glenn Dreyfus. Bobby Baughan, the famous Maple Leaf, our guest. Bobby, we're going to talk about your historic and your heroic 1964 Stanley Cup playoff goal. But let's go back a little further, because as a junior, you won back-to-back Memorial Cups. How did you do that?
Well, that was probably the toughest one of them all. It was very unusual for a team to win 2 Memorial Cups and back-to-back. And it was a great time to be playing, and I was quite young at the time, so I had a bunch of old birds with me that sort of kept me going, and that was the interesting part about it. But we also had a bunch of the more current guys that also played on that team, and like Bobby Pulford and Billy Harris and people like that. But it was an interesting time, and I went to my first Leaf training camp when I was 16. So, but I also went to my first football training camp when I was 15 to the Argonauts.
Oh.
And Danny Nicolak and Mike Nicolak, who played with Marlboroughs at that time. So Mike was, so we were both good football players. And
how close did you come to being a football player instead of a hockey player?
Well, I was there. They wanted me to stay, and Danny did stay, and he's in the Hall of Fame for football. He was our centerman, and Mike and I were the halfbacks. So I thought that was going to be my calling. And then I had the turn to go to the Maple Leaf training camp.
Well, you did your share of hitting, even though it wasn't on a football field. You played 11 years for the Leafs, and I want to read to you what the Toronto Star wrote about you. They called you Captain Crunch, and this is what they wrote. When it came to dishing out a good, clean, old-fashioned body check, few in the NHL did it any better than Bobby Baughan.
Well, I must say everything was premeditated in my game schedule. I played the game the night before that we were playing, and I always gave them an opening to the outside. And if they took it, that was their problem, because that's where they got in trouble. Because I always used to say to Johnny Bauer or Sawchuk, or whoever our goaltender was at the time, I said, I'm going to give you lots to see the puck, and that's what all the goaltender needs, is to be able to see the puck to stop the puck. So I always give them the outside opening and then shut it down.
And is that where you got the nickname Boomer?
That's where I got the nickname Boomer.
Do you remember who gave that to you?
No, I don't. I don't know how that came, other than I did a lot of heavy hitting, and that was, but it wasn't for my shot, I'll tell you that. That winning goal that I had in 1964, I call it a triple flutter blast with a follow-up blooper.
You know, all these years later, you could say, no, it was a rocket, it was a laser beam.
Yeah, no.
Now, before we get to 64, since we mentioned boom, there was a game in Toronto in 62 where someone tossed a bomb near the Leafs bench and very close to you.
That's right.
What do you remember about that?
I was scared, you know what. They scared the jumpings out of me. And of course, I was probably the only Leaf player that ever had season tickets. So what I was worried about was where my wife was sitting. And my tickets were in the southeast corner of the old Maple Leaf Gardens, and I was the only fellow that had tickets at that time of my life. But I was a ticket man for all my friends, and
Well, if that made you scared, that was one of the only times, because
that was the only time I was scared. Really.
here's what your trainer, another Bobby, Haggard, okay, he said this about you: Bobby Baughan is a marvel. And he said this because you one night took a shot from Bobby Hall, and it was a shot to your ankle. And in the same game later on, or the next night, I'm sorry, when you were playing the Bruins, you laid a thunderous hit on Reggie Fleming, and you were back blocking shots.
Well, Bobby Hall, who was here earlier today, and we just had a chat and a laugh, and I accused him of breaking my big left toe every time we played in Chicago. I swear to God, he ordered that shot, and it was my left big toe, and he broke it. I don't know how many times, but I said to him today, I think it was 8 times that he broke that big toe. And of course, I couldn't make any excuses that I couldn't play, but the old CCM skates we had back in those days, the second day the toe went soft on them, and so because of the dampness. But that was the story, and Bob, he laughed like hell today about bringing that up.
Now to 1964. Stanley Cup Final, Game 6, Detroit against the Leafs. Detroit's up 3-2, and they go on a power play, and you block a shot. So tell us from there.
Well, I blocked the shot, and we just then I knew I had a little problem going, but I wasn't sure what had happened. But anyway, so we came out on the next shift, and the puck came around and off the boards, and it was rolling around like this here, and I couldn't get control of it. So all I could do was take a whack at it, and hopefully towards the net, which it did go towards the net, and I call it the triple flutter, and with a follow-up blooper. But it was like this, going towards the net, and then it went off Bill Gadsby's stick and went the opposite direction on their goaltender.
But what were you doing back on the ice? Because we haven't mentioned that it was Gordie Howe who took the shot that fractured your leg, and that you were carried off on a stretcher. So what the heck were you doing back out there?
Well, I just didn't know what I was doing, that's all. I didn't think I was hurt bad enough to not get, because I knew it was down to the last straw, and so I always wanted to get back on the ice, and I did it many times. You probably don't know this, but I played 5 years with a broken neck, and I didn't know that. And
Wow.
And it was John Beliveau. My skates slid out from underneath me, and I hit Beliveau's knee with my forehead and snapped my head back. And I was out for about 2 weeks in Montreal, and then they said I was all right to go back and play. So I played another 5 years, and then I got hit again, and this time it was for good. I broke my neck, and I ended up having a major surgery on my neck, and that was
Well, fortunately, you were being paid a fabulous salary, so it was all worth it, right?
oh, Well, I guess in comparison to the Rocket Richard and Gordie Howe, when I went to Detroit and I told Gordie what I was making, he said, "Holy jumpins!" He said, "I don't even make 50,000." And I said, "Gord, that's what's been holding us all back between you and the Rocket, that you didn't know what your values were." And that's what why Punch got rid of me, is he got all these young kids coming into my room at training camp and wanted to talk to me about their contracts. And so that was my start into the management end, where I ended up being the first president for the Players Association when all Teddy Lindsay and all the other older guys, they all got turfed out or transferred to other teams. And but I went to Oakland, California, because Punch was so mad at me.
Well, let's go back a second, because 2 nights after you broke your leg in '64, we don't want to overlook the fact that Game 7, the Leafs won 4-0, and you mentioned the hardships physically you went through. Well, I read that you actually were taking Novocaine shots every 10 minutes. Is that true?
That's true.
But and the Leafs won your 3rd consecutive Stanley Cup championship. Now that's something to really be proud of.
No, well, it was a team effort. It always is a team, and that's the story about life, and it's with our wives and our children. It's all about working like a team, and that's all I can say about the wonderful crowd that I've seen here for today and the other times that I've been out here beforehand, to see how you young families are growing up and how you're communicating with one another. And I think it still is a way to think about it as a team effort. A family has to have that team effort to make everybody comfortable and within the family. And if you do make a mistake, everybody's going to make mistakes, and I don't think that should be held against anybody. I think it's learning from your mistakes and progressing on to being positive, in The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. I spent a lot of time with him in New York on the steps of Marlborough Collegiate Church in New York on Sundays when we were playing in New York. And then Billy Graham is another one of my great friends that I've made over the years. And if you read his new book, I Am Who I Am, and that's my new name, I Am Who I Am.
Well, let's close with this. Your interests go far beyond hockey, so spend a minute and tell us in retirement the places you've gone, at least some of them, and some of the things you've done.
Well, I guess it's pretty unusual. I've been involved in financial businesses. I was a farmer to start with. We farmed about 2,000 acres. We were one of the biggest farmers here in Canada. We ran a feedlot of 900 or 600 steers in the feedlot. We had 500 beef cows. We farmed 2,000 acres, 1,700 acres of corn, and 300 acres of hay. And so that was the farming. Then the Canadian government decided to expropriate everybody around us, and our farms went from way up here down to nothing because they froze our property, but they didn't take it away from us. So, but the average price of the farms in the Pickering area in Claremont were $5,000 or $6,000 an acre. So that tells you a bit what the money we lost. I worked on a line of credit most of my life, and in the farming industry. Then we went into the insurance business. We brought Aflac into Canada, and then into the UK, and that was about 5 years of my life, where I spent time with a lot of people like Warren Buffett from California, and Mr. McKee, who was one of the people that was my mentor from Aflac, and he was a partner of Warren Buffett.
And we should also mention your doctor, Bobby Bond, because you got an honorary doctorate.
Well, I've been to about 5 different universities, and I've got an honorary doctorate from Oshawa, and we mentor there, and we have a big foundation. We raised about $5 million out there, which nobody really knows about, but and I don't telegraph that very often. So we have a wonderful group of young people, and they're in their how they can get involved in their scholarship program is they have to be involved within the communities. They have to have their marks. They have to have a sports interest. All the things that young people need to have a chance at making it through this world. So it's how they learn to give back, and that's what we're trying to help them along in that program.
Bobby, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. We very much appreciate it. Bobby Bond, everybody.
Well, I must say that I've really enjoyed meeting all you people, and there's a lot that I know I haven't met, but I'm not gun shy. I get about 3,000 pieces of mail from all over the world, and I've traveled most of the world, and so I've been in the high Arctic with the natives, and the first great indigenous chief of the natives in Canada was George Armstrong's grandfather, great-great-grandfather, and Les Cucci is another friend of mine from North Bay, and that was his great-great-grandfather also. But so it's interesting that people, if you go across the Arctic and live in an igloo, you'd find that pretty interesting. You had to watch out for the dogs, that's all. when you wanted to go to the washroom, they just say, well, you just go out the door, because they didn't have indoor plumbing in the igloo. So you had to take a lot of things in strap. Then if you go the other way, then when I went into the Japanese and the Chinese and New Zealand, Australia, all that area, it's different again. The people are different, but the people are wonderful. And the other place, and I'm trying to remember it, is, and it's in that range of just north of there. But the time I was through there, I had everybody knew about Bobby Bond and knew that I liked silk clothes, and they all had little food stations around. And I just can't remember it right at the moment for the name of the people. But anyways, I was speaking there for Mackenzie Financial, and there was 450 of us. So everybody, I got everybody suited up with silk shirts and suits, and women had their dresses and so forth. So it was really quite fascinating that everybody knew Bobby Bond. So,
And now we do too a little bit better. Thank you.
Well,
We're going to bring the Ladies Talking Leafs on for a few
okay.
minutes. So thank you so much for your time.
That's fine.
You are delightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Laura, can I get you to help me?
You're all situated.
The third microphone, unfortunately, is there, so we'll have to get the group together and pretend like you like each other. So, are we still recording, or I want to make sure? Okay, good. Okay. Okay, yeah, scoot in. Okay.
Hello.
Now we're proud to be joined by Christine Dimoff and Sylvia Hargitay. Ooh, I was worried about that. I got that right. They've been Ladies Talking Leafs for many years, and these days we're privileged because we can listen in because they have a podcast of the same name. Now, you guys have described your show as the definitive Toronto Maple Leafs podcast created by women for women. So tell us about it.
Okay, well, we basically started the show because, like you said, apropos, we've been talking about the team for as long as we've been friends. And I don't know, like so many people are starting podcasts, and we thought, well, you know, why not put our passion out there for everyone? So that's basically how it all began.
Yeah, that's basically it. We're two females. We love the game. We love the Leafs, and we know there's a lot of female Maple Leaf fans out there. And so, I mean, we've been fans since we've been little, over 40 years for myself, and probably Sylvia around the same time. And we just, I guess we have an energy and an enthusiasm that we just love talking about the Leafs, and we just want to pass that on to listeners. But we also have male listeners, so we're not just for the we're geared towards females, but we have a lot of male listeners too.
Really,
because
it's to give a voice to the female Leaf fan.
Yeah.
Because we don't have like this really anywhere on the media. Like you're hearing male voices, and there's a lot of female voices out there that need to be heard. So we decided to give it a shot.
Where do you find the podcast, and when does it drop, as the kids like to say?
Okay, so it drops we're doing it semi-monthly now, so like every 2 weeks. Usually it's the first Wednesday of the month, and then a second episode following to the next 2 weeks after that on a Wednesday. We're actually going to be recording our next show tomorrow, which will drop on Wednesday if you want to listen in. And you can find us on like every podcatcher that is out there. So Apple, Spotify, any of the Google Podcasts, Podcast Addict. You can find us pretty much everywhere. Yeah.
Well, I listened to the last one, and you discussed the Amazon All or Nothing series about the Leafs. And so, Christine, I'll let you go first.
Sure.
So, spill the tea.
well,
What did you think?
It actually wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, but the fifth episode was tough to see the way Matthews and Marner at the end of the season, basically, that devastating loss. It was really hard to see them there in the dressing room. But yeah, no, I was impressed with Sheldon Keefe's coaching style, something that I didn't see in him, and just the way he made players accountable. And yeah, that was the main thing I took from it, and just I guess I saw the players from a different angle, obviously, right? From a different perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, it was nice to get a little bit of behind the scenes on that. One of the things that really stood out to me, actually, was the whole narrative around Freddie Anderson throughout the season and his injury, and how that actually impacted so many aspects for the team. And I was really, really shocked, because she's mentioned episode 5, that really from that episode you would not even know that he was still on the team. Like, it was almost like he was not part of the team already at that point. So I found that really kind of an interesting way to present a player who was like such a huge backstop for the team for so many seasons leading up to that, and kind of a sort of bittersweet exit for him, really.
And which one of you two came up with the wonderful new expression, "they got goalied"?
I'm not sure that we can take credit for that actual slogan or whatever, but because I think that's sort of out there, but I don't know.
Sylvia definitely said it at one point.
I probably
Yes,
say it more, yeah.
Yeah, we were thinking last night's game might have been the same thing, too.
100%, yeah.
But,
Since this is Hockey Time Machine, for fans who think recent Leaf seasons have been rough, let me remind you of a couple of facts you brought up.
Okay.
14-4, Buffalo Sabres, 1981.
Yeah.
You guys take it from there.
yeah, no, that was tough. As a kid, I used to, like, the Leafs weren't on the TV all the time, so I used to actually take my school books and I used to listen to the game on the radio. And yeah, there was one, so I'm doing my schoolwork while I'm listening, and it just kept going up, the score up and up and up. Eventually it was 14-4, and it was just, I don't, like, to me, that's ingrained in me, sort of thing. So I know as Leaf fans today, they think they're, like, it's 17 years since we haven't won a playoff series, but back in the 80s, it was almost like every night it was like 10-0 or 8-1, 14-4. We've been through the ringer, let's say, when it comes to that, and that's ingrained in my mind. So, I mean, yes, obviously we want the team to win now and win in the playoffs, but let's just say it's been worse, definitely.
Go ahead.
Well, I would just, caution people that, there's a spattering of empty seats right now. Like, we remember the days when Maple Leaf Gardens was half empty, or it would clear out like halfway through the third period completely, practically, and we'd be sitting in the stands still. So, yeah, there have been rocky times for this franchise throughout history, and I have no doubt that, when things start to kind of perk up again, the fans will be back, and it will all be forgotten.
Okay.
You don't believe us?
Every fan base has things they try to forget, but somehow you only forget the good times, not the 14-4, because you still remember
That's
it.
true.
I'm just impressed you were still there at the end of the broadcast.
Yes, yeah. Well, I was doing my schoolwork, so I always had one ear on the radio, one eye on the work, sort of thing.
On your last podcast, you also had what I thought was a fascinating discussion comparing captains of the Leafs.
Right.
Captains of the past, like Sundin or Phaneuf,
Right.
against John Tavares. So
Yeah.
go ahead, take it from there.
You go ahead.
Well, I think basically we were discussing how Christine had brought up the point where she felt that as a captain of the Leafs, you really should be out there more and taking the lead and taking some of the pressure off of the team and putting it on your shoulders, and that is part of the job of being an Original Six franchise leader. And I 100% agree with that. But he's a very quiet leader and is not very demonstrative. But we have had other captains that are somewhat quieter, like you mentioned, Matt Sundin. He very much was also, and but I also felt that media actually has a big part to play in that, because it seems like Tavares is not necessarily asked the hard questions like some of those previous captains have. Like Matt Sundin has always stood up in front of the cameras at the end with, mind you, it's like now with COVID and everything, Zoom interviews, maybe it's not the same. But also, like, I just remember Dion Phaneuf getting grilled after every game, and the media really playing a big part in that, and it seems like they don't really press Tavares quite the same way. So, you know, we'd like him to stand up more, but they're also not asking him the tough questions, I don't think.
Yeah, she pretty much covered it there, but
Okay. No,
yeah.
I'll just add,
Yeah.
I last week I had some grilled Phaneuf. Delicious. You're the right people to ask as we finish up about the intersection of women and hockey. And I want to bring up two stories, one happy, one very much not.
Yeah.
The happy one is that there are now women officials working in the American Hockey League who have earned it and are doing well by all reports. Mm-hmm. So the question is this an important milestone, and how much will you be celebrating when one of them gets called up to the NHL?
Oh, for sure. It's something to celebrate. Even yesterday, there was I believe in the OHL too, there was a first female linesman that played. I don't recall which team, but I know it was last night. And yeah, these are huge milestones for women to be a part of the game and included and recognized for all the work that they do. It's the same thing as whether it be male doing it. And then if they were to actually make it to the NHL, that would be awesome. Like, that would be, I don't see it. I actually have a friend that I've told her she's officiating though in female hockey, and I said, it's too bad, like, for her time anyways, that she didn't get the opportunity to actually go further. And I think the NHL is doing a great job too now. They're starting to include women in their officiating scouting and that. So yeah, no, it's huge. And we try and on our social media, we always point this out too. We always include these special moments when women are involved in hockey in different ways.
And for sure, we're going to be talking about it on our show.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Yeah.
The other story, unfortunately, was about a Pittsburgh area high school game where one of the teams had a female goalie who was the victim of vile chants from the stands. And it just reminds us, because this was otherwise an entirely male team, but she was good enough to be the goalie. In fact, she was the only goalie on the team. But it reminds us this may be 2021, but we're not where we want to be yet.
No, obviously those sorts of things are still prevalent, and these stories just kind of highlight that it still exists out there. However, if she was the only goalie on that team, guaranteed her teammates probably had her back, and I'm hoping that that's where it kind of starts. Like, if it's not going to be on the ice or in the stands, it will be in the locker room where, you know, it's more accepted and her teammates will back her. And even though she had to endure that probably affected not just her, but also her teammates, who then could be a support and stand up, you know, down the road, and also teach their kids to not be that way, right? So it's got to start somewhere, and I kind of think that on the team that's a really good beginning.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, yes, it's still, like Sylvia said, it's still prevalent in the game with women not being accepted, let's say, on the male teams. But there's we keep pushing through it basically, and it's in time it'll change with the, like she said, with the teammates and with the management, new people, new ideas. It's going to get accepted more and more, and you just got. I mean, there's a long way to go, but at least it's a start.
I know that it's not a fun topic to discuss, but I believe in something that Brian McFarland has said, which is to not condemn is to condone. And do you agree these things need to be talked about and brought to light?
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, you need to talk. That's the only way it's going to change is to talk about it. Yeah, and
And that's
definitely.
why I'm like hoping that she got support from her teammates and that they're talking about it and they're going to be going to their friends and they're going to be talking about it. And if they hear something out there, somebody saying something negative, that they're going to start to speak up.
Well, you two guys are on the front lines as well, and if I may be so bold, you go, girls.
Thank you.
And we all have to go now. So
Thank
we'll
you.
look for your next podcast.
Yep.
Ladies Talking Leafs every couple of
Yes.
weeks.
Yep.
Christine and Sil,
Yeah.
thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
All right. Ladies Talking Leafs, we're out of here.